try this again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Keula Show. I am your host today, the Insider of the Insiders, the guy that doesn't know how to turn his mic on properly here for a special Tuesday afternoon edition here of TKS. Why are we today at TKS on a Tuesday, guys? Because of our amazing guest that probably knows how to turn his mic on better than I do. He's done it for a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, the longtime play-by-play voice of the New York Islanders. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris King. Chris, how are we doing today, sir?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Is it on, Tyler? Is it on?
You are on and clear, Chris. I remember as soon as I started, I'm like, I can't hear myself think right now. What is going on here? I got to ask you, Chris, from broadcaster to broadcaster, how many times has that happened to you when you've gone on the air, you come back from a break, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, nobody can hear me?
Oh, yeah, it happens to us all, so, you don't feel bad about it. You just realize, it happens actually more for me. I do minor league baseball in the summer, so in the summer, I'm engineering my own broadcast as well, and, of course, I'm the one who's not pushing the button that turns my mic on, but during hockey season, we have a dedicated engineer, and our engineers are so good that never happens. So during baseball, quite a bit. During hockey, it's someone else's job, and they make sure that button goes on when it's time to talk.
I was about to say, you guys have a good crew there over that Hofstra radio station. I actually, it's funny, I was telling my wife that I was doing the interview with you today. She said, I'm like, hey, isn't that the guy that sounds like he's an Islanders fan calling Islanders games? And I'm like, yeah, because we listened to a lot of you during the playoffs this past year, Chris, because there was for some reason, the Islanders always seem to play in the afternoon. And that's when I do a lot of my driving around. So I turn on the NHL app and I listen to the games. So we heard a lot of you guys. What was it like for you broadcasting during at least the playoffs when Nassau was starting to fill back up, but just so many afternoon games, it seemed like?
Yeah, but you know what, Tyler, most of those games mean you're on national television, right? So that's
right.
A real, chance to showcase, maybe folks who don't follow the Islanders on a regular basis and don't really understand the incredible story that they had, this year, and closing out the Coliseum, as you were saying, which they did in remarkable fashion, and then coming within one win of the Stanley Cup Finals. So it was an amazing ride, and I think the biggest thing for me, Tyler, was we went from the playoffs 2 years ago, where the Islanders had a very similar run, but all of that was done virtually. I was sitting at, as you mentioned, Hofstra University's radio station studios, calling those games off a monitor. But here, by the time the playoffs rolled around and by the time we got to the semifinal round, the Coliseum was packed. Pittsburgh was packed. Boston was packed. Tampa was packed. We got to go back on the road. So it just really gave everyone, all broadcasters, an energy jolt to be back in those buildings instead of sitting in a studio that was, hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles away from where the actual game was being played.
How was it at first broadcasting this season? Because obviously, at least in Nassau and a lot of barns in the United States, the capacity started to grow little by little. But everyone pretty much started about the same, very little, if any, capacity. How was it going from almost an empty barn there at the Coliseum to literally that last home game at the Coliseum where they closed it down, where it was just madhouse, just like it was back in the 80s and early 90s?
Yeah, it's a great point, Tyler, and it's pretty much, exactly what you said. When we first came back, there were no fans at all. So that was, you were happy to be back in the arena, but especially during intermissions is when I really noticed it, because during the games, they pumped in the PA sound, they pumped in the music, they pumped in the fake crowd, and it sounded like a hockey game. But during those intermissions, when I have a chance usually to walk around a little bit, I mean, you could hear a pin drop. It was so quiet. So it was just eerie to walk around a completely empty building, and then little by little, I remember the first night so well because the Islanders did a great job. The first night they were allowed to have fans back in. They did 1,000 first responders. So those were the perfect people to welcome back in. And then it went to 1,600, and then it went to 2,400, and then it went to 3,000 and 6,000 and 9,000. And before you knew it, it was nearly the full capacity, of the Coliseum, which is still shortened these days compared to most buildings. But you would have known there was only maybe a couple of hundred empty seats by the time it was over for COVID reasons. And it did sound just like, the Coliseum of the old days and even the Dynasty days, as you mentioned. So to go from absolutely nothing, I think our first 12 games were completely without fans, to go to a jam-packed building for those final two playoff games against Tampa, which both had incredible endings. Game 4, Ryan Pulock makes what's going to be known as the save in Islander history now in the crease to win the game. And then Anthony Beauvillier wins Game 6 in overtime to send it to Game 7. And we didn't know it then, but that, turned out to be the final game ever at the Coliseum. But anybody that was there, either one of those two games, will never forget just how loud that building was and how amazing those endings were.
It's funny because I have a lot of guys that I talk to during the playoffs, like, see, Tampa's going to get it done tonight. And they were referring to Game 6. And I'm like, those fans will not allow the Islanders to lose that last game at the Coliseum. No way, Chris, was Tampa going to walk out of there with the Wales trophy. I knew the Islanders were at least forced to 7. It was going to be tough going down there to Tampa, but not a chance, Chris. And you've been there since that building was erected in 1972 when that first team first stepped on the ice, that the Islanders fans, whether they had to protest the game or not, the Tampa Bay Lightning were not walking out of Game 6 as winners, right?
And that's the feeling going in, absolutely, because you know what, they had been unbeaten, and they remained unbeaten in Game 6s in the entire playoffs. The problem for the Islanders was in the Tampa series, in the first two series, the Pittsburgh series and the Boston series, those series were knotted up at 2 apiece, and the Islanders went on the road and won Game 5, came home and closed it out in some of their, most emphatic victories. I mean, a convincing win over the Penguins in Game 6, a convincing win over the Bruins in Game 6. The difference in the Tampa series was they go down to Tampa even at 2 games apiece in Game 5, and they get shut out 8-0. So, they're coming back home off an 8-0 loss. Here's this team that just absolutely steamrolled them 2 nights earlier. And, we all hoped it was going to have that ending, Tyler, and we all felt confident because of the Islanders' success in the previous Game 6s. But, if you're coming in off an 8-0 loss, it's hard to have the confidence as high as it would have been as they, came home off incredible wins in Game 5s in Pittsburgh in overtime and in Boston, which they had a big 3-goal lead in, and then the Bruins got within 1 late. But, you had the gut feeling they would pull it out. But let me tell you, the confidence was shook a little bit when the previous game was an 8-0 loss to the same team you're about to play again.
That is true. I do get that. And I tell you right now, by the power of Ralph Macchio, you guys were going to win that game, Game 6. But you go into the offseason now. We'll wait to get to the actual team first. Let's talk about this new little building you guys got going over there by Belmont Park, UBS Arena. I've seen the pictures. Obviously, a lot of us have seen the graphic art that's been the portrayal of what it's going to be. But have you been on the site yet? I know I've seen Stan Fischler doing some stuff over there. Have you been able to stop by the rink yet?
Yep, I've had 3 tours, Tyler. Pretty much, right at the groundbreaking, somewhere in the middle, and then my last tour, I think, about 3 weeks ago. So, I've been there just to see the progress each and every time, and I'm just amazed at how much has changed each time I go back. And I'm sure I'll go back, once or twice more before opening night, which is November 20th. But it's just a jewel, an absolute jewel of a building, and credit to the Islander ownership and management that, took the best they could find in every other, not only NHL building, but they went to most NBA buildings, most football stadiums, most baseball stadiums, and they listened to the fans. The fans told them the things they loved about the Coliseum, so they made sure to bring some of that in, but got rid of the things they didn't like, and then kind of took the best of everybody else's building. So everybody copies from everybody else, but from what I've seen, being in there and just knowing all the thought that went into the architecture, it's going to be spectacular. It's going to be absolutely spectacular. Again, it opens November 20th. That's the good news. The bad news, the Islanders have to play 13 road games to begin the season, which is an NHL record. No team has ever played more than 9 straight on the road to open up a year. So they're going to be on the road for 13 straight games. Now, again, they do get a lot of breaks in there. There's a 5-day break, a 4-day break, a couple 3-day breaks. So it's not like they're going to spend 5 weeks away from home. They'll get to come home, have some time with their family, cut it up into small chunks. But that's going to be the big challenge. What will that record be after those first 13 games when they step on the ice at UBS Arena to face the Calgary Flames on November 20th?
It's so funny to look at that because you talk about the breaks, and we had Ken Cal on last week, and I remember I thought to myself, we were talking about how with the All-Star game and the Olympic break being jammed in there, now granted the Olympics, things could change, but at least that's the NHL's plan. If there's any silver lining for the Islanders probably having a jam-packed schedule later on down the line, at least they're going to be home for most of those games, right?
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing. Then you take the 13 out, right? If you realize everybody plays 41 home and 41 road, if you take those 13 out, let me do my math here quickly. That tells me you got 28. At that point, only 28 road games left and 41 home games after that. So, you got to take advantage of the fact that after you get through those 13, there are a lot of extensive homestands. And you talked about it, that built-in break for the Islanders. It's exactly 3 weeks between All-Star Weekend rolling into the Olympics. So they'll have a 3 entire weeks off. So certainly time to rest, and that'll come in February, generally right when teams, start to make the big push in March and April for the postseason. So they've just got to get through, that 13-gamer, which again on paper looks daunting, but when you see all the breaks that are built into it, it's not like, they're packing a suitcase and not coming back for 5 weeks. It's nothing like that. They'll get home for plenty of time in between. One of those games is in New Jersey, which is barely a road trip. They just bus on over and come back. So again, even though it is, 13 games, the way it's broken up, it won't be nearly as bad as it sounds, to be honest.
Yeah, and that is the good thing. And obviously, going back to the Metropolitan Division, you play a lot of the teams that are within driving distance. Obviously, some teams like to fly, even though it's only a couple-hour drive. You mentioned the Devils there, Chris. Will probably be the last one here before we jump on to this year's Islanders team. But Travis Zajac retiring after 15 seasons, signs a one-day contract. We talked a little bit about on last night's show. But, he was only there for a little bit for the Islanders. I believe it was 27 games off the top of my head, including the playoffs. But you got to see him just at least, what was it, at least 4 times a year under the current schedule, but more before that because he'd been with the team now, with the Devils, 15 seasons. Obviously, just finished with the Islanders here. What made Zajac such a special player and why he could play so long? Just from your experience as mostly for the majority of his career being on the other side of the booth.
Yeah, I think just, everything that they got him for. The fact that, as a center, he could do that. He could play wing. He could play the left side. He could play the right side. He did a little bit of everything for the Islanders. Obviously, he can kill penalties. Terrific face-off guy, great character guy. And, when Oliver Wahlstrom went down early in the playoffs, he was the guy who really came in and jumped on that third line with J.G. Pageau, and he played some terrific hockey. So, they loved his leadership. They loved everything he brought. Lou likes the ex-Devils, too. Lou Lamoriello, the Islander general manager, is obviously Kyle Palmieri has come back. They've gotten in, Zach Parise, who they've added to the lineup as well. They have Corey Schneider as, technically their third goaltender. Obviously, Andy Green has been a terrific pickup on the blue line. So there are a lot of ex-Devils sprinkled over this Islander roster. And again, a big, part of that is Lou Lamoriello's connection to these players and knowing exactly what they bring and what they're going to add to the room. And certainly, when the Islanders needed a veteran presence, when the youngster went down in the playoffs, there was Travis Zajac to step right in, and the club never missed a beat.
It's so funny how, because I remember I said to a lot of people look at me and say the Islanders, they can't be good for that long. They have so many guys that are over 30. They have, the Komarovs, the Clutterbucks, Martins, and whatnot. But they have, like you said, that youthfulness kind of sprinkled in there. Of course, we can't mention, we got to talk about Matthew Barzal. And you have younger guys that are coming through, like Oliver Wahlstrom eventually. Casey Zizekas is, I say he's one of the younger guys, but he's 30. But then you mentioned Anthony Beauvillier with that big goal in Game 6. That's just up front. I mean, Ryan Pulock's going to probably be the future of this team on the back end. But I like the fact that that Lou is bringing in older, veteran guys at the deadline that he knows that are going to help in this playoff push. But at the same token, he realizes he can't give up the younger guys that are going to carry this team moving forward once those guys hang up their skates.
Absolutely. And, you talked about it. Matt Barzell's 24. Anthony Beauvillier's 24. Noah Dobson's 21. Oliver Wahlstrom's 21. These are the guys, that are the youth movement of the club. But then you sprinkle in all those veterans. Obviously, bringing in Zdeno Chara is going to push the average age up quite a bit at 44, the oldest player in the league. And Zach Parise, who comes over at 37. But you know what? You have a lot of guys, as you mentioned, who are right in the middle, like Casey Cizikas and Brock Nelson and Josh Bailey and those guys. So it is a good mix of extremely older players, extremely younger players, and in the middle as well. And, right now I just really like the balance that they're showing across the 4 lines, across the 6D, and obviously Sorokin. We didn't mention him, a extremely young goaltender who is going to have a great fight on his hands this year if he wants to try to unseat Semyon Varlamov as the number 1 goaltender for this club.
That is very true because I think Sorokin. I mean, whenever Varlamov seemed to slip up at all, and Sorokin could step in, and vice versa, and that's where you have a really good tandem. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just Barry Trotz's system, but with the way Robin Leonard came out in 18-19 and the way Varlamov's kind of revitalized his career, apparently that's where goaltenders who need to revitalize their career have to go. At least that's the way things are looking there in Long Island. You mentioned Zdeno Chara there, and of course Zach Parise are 2 guys that of course, Parise coming over from Minnesota after that buyout, someone that Lou knows well. Lou drafted him when he was in New Jersey. I got to ask you the big question here, and maybe we have to ask this when you jump on the press conference call with Lou here in about 10 or so minutes. What are these AAV values for these 1-year contracts? I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now. Chara's been signed for a few days. Parise's been signed for felt like 2 weeks now, and there's still no contract value. What's the deal there, Chris?
Yeah, that's a strange one, Tyler. I don't have an answer for you. And again, remember, for a long time, all the UFAs and RFAs that had been signed, weren't out there at all. Nobody knew what they were making until those numbers finally came through. And I couldn't tell you, what Parise and Chara are going to be certainly on 1-year deals. But as far as all the other guys are concerned, it's amazing that, Lou gets flack for doing it the way he does it. If you think about it, why would you want anyone who you're potentially going to deal with to know exactly how much room you have left against the cap? The analogy I give it, Tyler, is when you play poker, what do? You keep your cards facing you. You don't show everybody else. By basically letting out, who you've signed and at what price, every other general manager would know exactly how much room you have left under the cap. And if you're trying to make a deal with him, that's information you don't want them to have. So I think, as we go forward here, more and more GMs are going to do it the Lou way, where you're going to try to keep this information off Cap Friendly for as long as you possibly can until you make all your deals, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. But to me, as a poker player, you don't show everybody your cards. You keep them facing yourself, and you make everybody else wonder what you've got exactly, right? To me, that's the perfect analogy, and I don't understand why other teams feel they're compelled to let the whole world know what their situation is, because it only hurts your bargaining power.
Well, clearly, you never played poker with my wife. No, I tell you, I agree with you there, because that does make a lot of sense. Because, of course, when, coming from, if anyone ever watches Toronto, when JT was signed, everyone needed to know that he was getting a pay cut coming to Toronto. Same thing when Connor McDavid. I mean, could you imagine if Jonathan Tavares, and I know I mentioned this, and it's not just because we're talking to the New York Islanders play-by-play guy here, but could you imagine if Lou was one of the guys that partially signed him there. Or no, it was Kyle Dubas that signed him right after Lou left and went to the Islanders. Could you imagine if Kyle Dubas waited 2 months with that contract value and didn't give it up until the day before the season? How much social media would have just exploded with speculation? That would have been crazy.
It's true, but again, as I explained, it doesn't make sense to me. Just because Lou's the only one that does it doesn't mean it's wrong. I think it's right. I think you're going to see more and more people copy his model when they really sit down and think about it. What advantage is there to telling the whole world exactly where you are as far as cap space remaining? There's none. It only hinders you. So Lou's, look, he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. He's the winner of the GM of the Year in back-to-back years for a reason, and he does things his way. He has his entire life. But to me, this is one that's a no-brainer, that if you're not doing it his way, I can't find the logic why you'd want everyone else out there that you're potentially trying to make a trade with to know exactly how much room you have left under the cap.
That's a real good point. They're technically over the cap right now on Cap Friendly. However, they're a little over almost $4.5 million, but they still have to take off the $6 million with the LTIR for Johnny Boychuk, which would give them a couple $1 million. So that's where they have right now. I remember when I heard about the Chara signing, the first thing I thought was, all right, Lou, what you got here? And that's because I just try to figure out, because obviously Chara is on the back nine, if not playing on 17 right now, Chris. What do you think? And I mean, shoot, you were there when big old Chara stepped down the ice, when everyone else was around, maybe 6'1", 6 foot, and all of a sudden here comes this behemoth stepping on the ice there at the Coliseum back in the 90s. What do you think that Chara can bring now to this hockey club? And from what you knew about him when you kind of saw him back in his early days in Long Island?
Yeah, I mean, Tyler, what I think he can bring now is a veteran presence on that blue line. And again, I know he's 44, but I know him extremely well. As you said, I was with the team when they drafted him back in 1996. He played his first 4 years in the league as an Islander, and I got very close to him, and I kind of stayed in touch with him over the years. So here's this guy who's 44, but he's in shape like he's 24. 6'9", over 250 pounds. He's got that incredible reach. He doesn't have the 108.8 mile an hour slap shot that he used to have, the all-time record, but he still can bring it. He's going to do a terrific job on the penalty kill. And you know what? The Islanders' biggest need was a left shot defenseman. They had to send Nick Leddy to Detroit for cap reasons, the same way they lost Devon Taves, 2 years ago to Colorado just because of cap reasons. But going into this week's camp, their glaring need was a left shot defenseman. And suddenly here's this guy in Zdeno Chara who's won a Stanley Cup, who's won a Norris Trophy, who's won a Mark Messier Award. 14 years he was the captain of the Boston Bruins. This is the guy, if he's out there, you got to bring him in. So, kudos to Lou for getting it done and really, settling him into a perfect role. They're not bringing him in here, Tyler, to be a 1, 2, or 3. they're bringing him in to be a 4, 5, or 6, and he's perfectly suited for that role. So, as you mentioned, I go way, way back with him to the early days, and just when he arrived on Long Island, he was so raw, he was so big. He was just like there was so much attention drawn to him immediately as the tallest player in the NHL coming to the Islanders in that '96 draft, and he handled it so well. And I was just so proud to follow his whole career. And you could just see the look on his face when he held his press conference, just saying, hey, I've come full circle now. I've come all the way back to the place where it began. And like you said, it's hole 17 or 18, but Z, he might just say, hey, let's go to the 19th hole and keep it going, right?
Go all Caddyshack on him there. I like this Islanders team. I'm getting ready to do my locked on predictions here for the season, and it's hard for me not to say that this team has a shot to take the Metro. What is the ceiling for this hockey club, Chris? What are the expectations heading into the 21-22 season?
It's take the next step. It has to be, Tyler. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's the biggest difference for the Islanders going in this year is in the past, they certainly surprised some people. Maybe, 2 years ago, that run to the conference finals, whoa, hey, here's a team that, nobody expected to be there, and there they are again. And then last year, even going into the season, a lot of people had them missing the playoffs, and yet they go back and they go to the same exact spot and take it a game further. So, look, back-to-back seasons, they've been down to the Final Four. Back-to-back seasons, they've lost to the eventual champion, Stanley Cup Lightning. Tampa Bay Lightning lost the Stanley Cup winner, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and this year they lost Game 7 1-0 in Tampa on a shorthanded goal. So they're one goal away from the Stanley Cup final, and a team that really didn't scare anybody in the Montreal Canadiens on the other side. So it certainly was, disappointing. But I think the fact that, you add the Parisi element, you add the Chara element, and otherwise you're bringing back exactly the same team. Really no other changes besides those two. You're going to get a healthy Anders Lee back. Here's the guy that, was your leading goal scorer for 4 years. He missed the entire playoffs, a 40-goal man in the past. And you're going to get Ilya Sorokin now with that rookie season and learning English and the North American rinks behind him. I just see it, as an upside that they might be the team to beat right now in the Metro. And I can't see anybody that would give you an argument to say why they would take a step back when the roster is improved. And again, the Noah Dobsons and the Ilya Sorokins now have that valuable experience under their belt as Noah goes into his third year and Ilya into his second.
Oh man, the Metro, I always call it the monsters of the Metro because they'll find a way to have 5 teams go to the playoffs, especially with the Eastern Conference back to normal the way it is. The Islanders, they have the tools, and that's like you said, all they have to do is just keep climbing up, and let's see how they go here in the brand new, beautiful looking UBS Arena. Maybe I'll convince the wife to make a New York trip this year. We'll just have to wait and see. We have been chatting it up here with Chris King. Chris has got to duck on over. He's got to go ask Lou Lamoriello how much he's paying Zach Parise this year for us.
I'll do it. I'll do it for you, Tyler. Until Tyler wants to know.
Tyler wants to know, and then Lou, and I'm going to have 3 guys with suits knock on my door tomorrow, and I'm going to have ask you a question, Chris, on how these people got my address. Chris, thanks for stopping in once again, man. It's been a pleasure as always. Best of luck to you this season. We'll catch you on down the road.
Thanks, Tyler. It's always great talking hockey with you.
That was Chris King of the New York Islanders, the longtime play-by-play voice. He, like I said, folks, getting ready to go chat it up there with Lou Lamoriello himself. Obviously, like I said, not a big interview. Don't forget, though, if you're just joining us here live on the Kuhl Show Networks, first of all, I do apologize for not turning my mic on right away. That was embarrassing. Also, I should just a reminder, the fact that this will be up on the Kuhl Show next Monday night. So don't worry about that. That's okay. Because it's going to be recorded. I'm recording it right now. Yes, I am. Good thing I'm look over. I'm like, did I record this thing? Yes, I did. So that'll be up then as well as the podcast form as well. This little interview will not be on the Kuhl Show podcatchers or your favorite podcatchers, wherever you get it. It will be part of the show, be added in next Monday. So now, granted, that could easily change because Lou Lamoriello could totally drop a bomb on this on his press conference here in just a minute. So maybe this will be outdated soon. I mean, heck, that's the best part about editing and the fact that this can be played on later on is the fact that I can add to it if I need to. So that'll be pretty neat. Also Monday, I will be, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I will be partaking in the Locked On Network Crosscheck NHL with Andrew Berkshire and Mary. I'm going to be doing the Washington Capitals preview because if you missed the show last night on 12 Ounce Sports or haven't been able to watch the episode today here on the Kuhl Show YouTube channel or Twitter or your favorite podcatcher, listen to it. I have joined the Locked On crew as the new host of the Locked On Capitals podcast. I'm really excited to get that going. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to do my first bit. I know I'm going to be doing daily content and also post-game reactions as well. It'll be all on the Locked On Network, so make sure to check them out at Locked On Caps on Twitter, at Locked On Podcasts as well. Follow them on Twitter and Instagram. I will be posting a lot of stuff. It's going to be exciting. Like I said yesterday, I'm going to try to see what I can do. I love this show. I love doing the TKS because the fact that I like talking about all hockey. So we're going to keep working on keeping this together, making sure we can work out. Maybe we'll change up the format just a little bit. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. Let's get you some news here while I have you in attendance. I'll probably bring it up a little bit on Monday as well, but some news as we get ready to go to camp here in the next day or so. Zach Ronaldo of the Columbus Blue Jackets not being allowed to come to training camp by the Columbus Blue Jackets. The team's not allowing him because Zach Ronaldo has not been vaccinated yet. The team doesn't like that. They want to have their team fully vaccinated. John Davidson said that he's not allowed to come. John Davidson, now president of Hockey Ops, once again there with the Blue Jackets. Okay, that's good stuff. I like the fact that the teams are doing their part to make sure everyone's safe, or at least try to be as safe as possible. I get it. Yes, the vaccines are not 100% of it. You quit barking, Wexy. Wexy, no. Don't wake up your mother. Wixie's barking in the hallway right now, and I left her out of the kennel because of the fact that I knew I was only going to be doing this for a short while, so I didn't want to put her in the kennel because I got home from work today, walked her, she went poop and all that stuff, took care of all that, and then I'm like, all right, let's just hang out here because I know you're a little bit tired from the walk. Just hang out, chill. I'm going to go do the show. Maybe she's waiting for me. But anyways, like I said, I know the vaccines are not 150% effective. I get it. But that said, I like the fact that there needs to be at least an attempt to try to keep these players safe. Because the last thing these teams want, the players want as well, is to have games postponed or miss guys out of the lineup because they tested positive and whatnot. Now, there will be guys that'll come in out of the lineup, but the fact that they're vaccinated means that if they come in contact with someone else and they don't show those players don't show symptoms, the contact tracing, they can continue to play. It's not like last year's if 2 or 3 guys tested positive that they had to call the game. That's not how it is right now. We don't have to have the issues with Vegas and Dallas and Buffalo and Montreal too and Vancouver. If 1 or 2 guys test positive, they sit out of the lineup, make sure the other guys are okay, make sure they're not having any other issues. Perfect. We can get a full lineup in. Let's go. That is good to see coming out of, at least out of Columbus. Obviously, I believe from what Bill Daly said during Media Week this past week, he said that at least 99% of the players and staff are going to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Now, for those that don't remember regarding the Blue Jackets, Sylvain Lefebvre, assistant coach of the Blue Jackets, was fired because he was not going to get vaccinated. So there's no nonsense down there in the state below Michigan. Some other news, Kevin Hayes of Philadelphia, he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks after going under the knife, had abdominal surgery today. So that's a kind of a big blow for Philly, and it's been a tough couple months anyways for Kevin Hayes, losing his brother Jimmy last month, and now having to go under the knife and have to wait out 2 months of the season, or at least a month of the season. So we'll obviously have to wait and see how that goes, because Philly is right now the Calgary of the Metro, the big question mark. We have a good idea where the Rangers are going to be. We have a decent idea of how the Devils are going to be more competitive. They may not be a playoff team, but they're going to be more competitive. Pittsburgh's going to be in it. Islanders are going to be there. Washington will still be good. Philadelphia, nobody knows what to expect out of this hockey club. Columbus, I think they expect them to be kind of down there towards the bottom of the division. Philadelphia has the potential with Carter Hart and just having a good defense core to revitalize with Rasmus Ristolainen and Ryan Ellis. This team should be good. Up front, they still have talent. Yes, they lost Jakub Voracek. He went to Columbus, but I think now they have Cam Atkinson in there. And if Atkinson certainly steps up under his new role with Philly, all of a sudden you get that scoring touch that you need, and you get the consistency that Atkinson had in Columbus. Boom, you have the attack. They could be a top team in this division. At the same token, as we saw last year, you get the wrong pieces involved. You get a couple of bad bounces here and there. You have Carter Hart go slumping down the stretch, and the Flyers end up towards the bottom of the division. Now, granted, they played in the East last year, yet Philadelphia, I expected higher of them. That's just me. So we'll see how it goes this year. Hopefully Kevin Hayes can get a quick and safe recovery. And I believe the last bit of news I have here today for you. Oh boy, I thought I heard Kelly coming out of her bedroom. That was going to be trouble. She said she put earplugs in before she went to nap because she's napping right now. The last bit of news, Jim Houston, longtime play-by-play broadcaster up for Hockey Night in Canada, Sportsnet. I think he did stuff for TSN as well for a long time. Has retired from the booth after 42 seasons, 42 years of broadcasting. And I forgot to, unfortunately, I wish I had longer with Chris because I would love to have asked him because I guarantee you those guys probably cross paths over time at some point. And I just, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't get a whole lot of Canadian television when I was a kid. It was kind of hard to back in the day. You weren't able to bootleg something on your old dial-up Windows 98 computer. It was kind of hard to do that. You either had to watch the highlights on ESPN that had only Canadian feed, if you ever heard Jim Houston actually call games, out in Vancouver, by the way, or you just happened to get like a VHS tape of highlights, and that's where you heard him. Because for us in the States, Jim Houston was the voice of EA Sports NHL's franchise for so many years. And if I'm not mistaken, he was the first voice of the entire series. If I am correct here, and I believe I am, because I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Because 98 was the first one that I remember, NHL 98. I had 99, 2000. He went all the way, guys, till 2008, NHL 08. Well, he was on NHL 09 on the PS2 and Xbox 360. No, just the Xbox, right? Just the Xbox. The NHL 09 was when they flipped to Gary Thorne and Bill Clement for EA Sports. But that was on the new platforms, the PS3 and Xbox 360. So for me, my childhood was Jim Houston. Beauty or shoot these score. Like I could literally great save. Like I can hear all of that in my head whenever I hear and I think about Jim Houston because he was that synonymous voice. And I can't remember who his first color commentator's name was. I remember Bill Clement was 2000, 2001. And then he had Don Taylor, who used to do Sportsnet, whatever Sportsnet Central used to be back in the day, Sportsnet updates, whatever, on TV. He did that with him in 02 and 03, 04 until the end in 08. He actually did it with his actual partner. He actually did it with Craig Simpson, who he became the actual Hockey Night in Canada partner after Craig was no longer the coach for Edmonton. He was an assistant coach with Craig McTavish. Once Craig moved on from that, he became the color commentator of Jim Houston, and the rest is history. And that carried up until last season when Jim just hung out west with Vancouver, just only did the Hockey Night in Canada games, only did a few games too. And Craig stayed in Toronto with Chris Cuthbert. So it's bittersweet because he had such a great career, but man, he's done it for so long. And I wonder how it's going to work out there now because Jack Michaels, dare I say, and Senior Singh of who used to do Hockey Night in Punjabi, he's going to get a lot of reps out there out west. He did a lot last year too. But there's so many. This is not me jabbing at the play-by-play folks out there out west, but there's a lot of like the Flames and not the Oilers anymore because Jack Michaels is not that old. Vancouver, Winnipeg, like they're all getting older. They're not getting younger over there. So, you could be starting to see a turn with broadcasters coming up because I'm trying to think of all the national guys. Singh is probably one of the younger guys. I think he is the youngest. Brian Mudryk is the other because Gord's up there. Gord Miller is up there. Chris Cuthbert's up there. Man, yeah, there's a few. So there's gonna be maybe some changes coming up in CBC and TSN and Sportsnet in the years to come, because not everyone can call games forever. Jim Houston, he's been doing it for 42 years. That's the crazy part. That means, kids, he's been doing it since 1979 That's how old he's been doing. How long he's been doing it. Now, granted, there have been guys that have gone longer. Rick Jannard, obviously, we talked about him. That is one that comes to mind. But sometimes you just you've done all you can. Jim Houston has called the Stanley Cup Finals since 2010, I think it was. I think 2010 was his first final, if I'm not mistaken, because that was the Patrick Kane goal. I don't think he did 09. I think Bob Cole was 09. Bob Cole, I know, was in 08. I remember Bob Cole was in 08 when the Wings won the first time they played Pittsburgh in the finals. He did it for CBC. And then the next year, Patrick Kane, when he scored the goal, was Jim Houston on the call. So he did the finals, guys. If we're really going to keep track here, for 11 years. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, for 11 years. Not many guys have that distinction. Bob Cole was one. Danny Gallivan was another. Foster Hewitt was another. But then, that's it. Like, if you can seriously say that there have been, for the most part, 5 guys to call the Stanley Cup Finals in Canada. Foster, Danny, Bob, Jim, and now Chris Cuthbert. Now, I guarantee you there may have been a guy in there mixed in, but those were the main guys. And Chris Cuthbert's he used to do games for CBC. He went to TSN, did a lot of great work over there, and then came back before the bubble last year, which was a huge pickup, right? Like, if there's a trade deadline move for broadcasting, that's it, getting Chris Cuthbert to do the playoffs for Sportsnet and CBC. But that's what I'm just saying of how elite Jim Houston is. You can literally say there is a Mount Rushmore of Hockey Night in Canada broadcasters, and that's it. Those 4 guys, now with Cuthbert joining the crew. Like that right there, kids, should show how impressive it is. Which means now we're only a certain amount of time before we get Johnny Bartlett up on there, because John Bartlett, I think, deserves an honest shot. He does a lot now with he didn't do any of the Leafs games last year. He did, I think he went back to Montreal with when Chris Cuthbert came in. Because Bartlett did a lot in the 18-19, 19-20 season for Toronto. And I love Johnny Bartlett. I think that guy deserves to do some more playoff work. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I think that is it for this week's episode, this day's episode of The Kuehl Show. I know, like I said, it's a special show. Like I said, once again, the interview with Chris King that we did a little bit earlier on, be sure to check that out. It'll be on Monday's edition of The Kuehl Show, the usual Monday night show. Don't know how many more of those we got left. That remains to be foreseen. Keep tabs on it, folks. Make sure you follow us at The Kuehl Show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We will keep you all updated from there. I just want to thank you guys once again for joining us here on this Tuesday edition of The Kuehl Show. Thanks to Chris King once again for jumping on and talking Islanders with us. We'll have to get him on again. He's a fun guy to talk to. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time on The Kuehl Show.